Hey there, everyone, and welcome to our August training, which is all around how you can define success for yourself as an artist rather than just living out somebody else's dream. So, we're going to get started here in just a moment. Quick reminders first that you want to make sure you have all other streaming devices turned off. That if you've got Google, Spotify, Netflix, Dropbox, any of those things going, you want to turn them off now so that you have the maximum available bandwidth while we're on live together. You don't want to have any other streaming devices going. Second thing I want you to do is open that chat roll that's right here if you're on desktop. Could be on the sides or up at the top if you're on mobile. Get that chat roll open and make sure you've switched the button at the bottom to all panelists and attendees, and go on and share what your thoughts are around success for you yourself as an artist or just in general into the chat roll as we go, and we're going to be talking about some of these things. The third thing I want you to do is make sure you grab a pencil and a paper or a pen and paper, because this is not just going to be my talking about success. I've got an exercise at the end that I want to walk through with you so that you can help write your own vision of success and use that as a guideline rather than something else you may have been fed at another point along the way, because that's what usually happens to most of us is we absorb somebody else's idea of success. Yeah, Lisa, I think this is really important to think about. Lisa says, since the beginning of the COVID quarantine, my idea of artistic success has changed greatly. I think that's true for a lot of people, Lisa. I think we've kind of gone back to basics with the Great Reset and redefined not just what artistic success is, but what success in general is. So I think that's a great observation. So I'm going to share my screen here. I have a few slides that I want to talk about, keep me on track. Y'all know how I can love to talk and can go down rabbit holes. Yeah, exactly, Lisa. Lisa says she now paints what she loves. Perfect. Yeah, the world is changing. And one of the things that we forget about, though, is that we can be the author of our own lives. A friend of mine pointed that out to me this weekend. I was in a retreat all weekend. And he talked about the difference between authority and author, that we all have authority over our own lives. We can all be the authors of our lives. And I want y'all to think about that phrase. How can you be the author of your life? We're going to delve into that deeper here as well. So let me share the screen here, and we're going to dive right on in. So if you have a question that comes up while I'm talking, feel free to pop it into the chat roll, and I'll slow down and answer that question if I can as we go along. I just want to make sure I leave enough time towards the end for us to actually go through the exercise, because I think it can be really powerful when you at least begin to do the work of defining that sustainable vision of success. So we're going to be talking about, our whole focus today is on defining your vision of success as an artist, so you're not living somebody else's dream, somebody else's idea of what it means to be successful. Oops, I did not mean to open that. I meant to just go to the next slide. What I mean by that is that what we have a tendency to do by default, mainly because we grow up in cultures that let us know what the idea, the agreed upon idea of success is, that we tend to absorb an idea of success from the outside in, so that we hear what other people are telling us is success, what their vision of success is, what the appropriate vision of success is for the culture, versus coming up with our own vision of success from the inside out. I really began doing a lot of work around that probably 20 years ago, when I was first beginning to feel dissatisfaction around the idea of progressing through success as an academic. So as most of y'all know, I was a college professor, a college art professor for more than 25 years. And there's an accepted roadmap, a vision of success as a college professor that's pretty narrow. And it's even more narrow if you're a college painting professor. You're supposed to go through this little checklist and tick off the boxes. And then once you get to the top of that checklist, or to the bottom of it in this case, you have succeeded and you get a pat on the head and a gold star and perhaps even a chair upon retirement. And that began to feel very hollow. I got full tenured professor at a fairly young age, which is supposedly the penultimate academic success point. And when I hit that point, I went, okay, and what now? And I realized I really didn't care about some of the things that my colleagues cared about. Being chair of committees made me weep. Sitting in meetings made me pull my hair out. And I really didn't care about some of the things that they did in progressing their careers. And that was when I started looking at how do I define success and how do I create it on my own terms instead of somebody else's. And that was when I really started coming up with more of the idea of artwork living. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So I realized I had to know first what I actually wanted from life, what I really, really, really wanted. And most of us, first, we're never asked that question by somebody else in a way that really means they want to hear the answer. We get asked that sometimes by guidance counselors and people like that, and then they'll redirect you towards the appropriate path. But very rarely do people ask you and mean it. What do you want? What do you really, really deeply want? What's in alignment with your values? Heck, what are your values? What do you hold most dear? And those things can change over time. They can shift. And as values shift, those are big turns in the road, forks in the road that lead you to the next stage of personal and artistic development. So Lisa talked about, the quarantine and COVID being one of those forks in the road, that her idea of success has changed. That probably means that some of her values have shifted as well. And I think that's going to be true for most of you, which is one of the reasons I wanted to dive into this in particular now. Super important now, because we're all at that point of what I've been calling the Great Reset. There's lots of horrible stuff that's happened as a result of the pandemic. If you're listening to this 6 months, 24 months, 36 months out, you will remember what it was like to be in the middle of the pandemic. It is a great reset. There are horrible things that have happened, but those things have given us a chance to redefine our values and redefine where we want to go. If not you, who? If not now, when? Great John Lewis said that. If not you, who? If not now, when? And that has resonated with me forever. But I think it's even more crucially important now. You have a gift. You need to define what it is, and you need to figure out what delivery method to get that out into the world is going to make you feel like a success and give you impact. So I realized I hadn't really questioned what I wanted, and I needed to dig deeper into it. I needed to become the author of my own life rather than just accepting the roadmap that other people put out there for me. I'd absorbed that idea that you can't make a living as an artist. You need to have some sort of other way of surviving, and you can do your art on the side. I still figured out a way to make it pretty big in my life, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So I made changes. I started going through how I could define that success for myself. And the formula that I came up with for defining success is to think about art, work, and living. Work being financial stability and reward. Having stability financially gives you the space to create, the space to define your lifestyle intentionally. None of these three things are weighted more than the other. They're all equally important, and they're all part of coming up with your own vision of success. Now, when I'm going to talk in a minute about what I mean by that in terms of art, but they're usually a combination of three things that we're going for in creating our vision of success. We're either painting for pleasure and looking for financial stability from somewhere else, or we are painting for profit. So we're getting our financial stability from our studio practice, or we're painting for impact, where we're using our work to create the impact we want to make in the world. So the work becomes part of the living and the art, all three tied in together. Each of us is going to have a little bit different proportion and ratio of those three motivations: pleasure, profit, and impact. I want you to think about those as you come up with your idea of what success is to you. So let's look at these three things individually in just a minute. But remember that your idea of success falls at the center point of the overlapping of your ideals around your art, around your creative lifestyle, your living, and around your work, how you create financial stability. What you come up with, your formula for doing that, is what is going to make you feel successful and, as a result, feel happiness. Our perception of happiness is directly tied to our perception of success. And it doesn't have to be the big, giant, honking success. It can be little, measurable, daily successes. But you're not going to feel that unless you know what it is, unless you begin to pinpoint it down. So we're going to talk about 7 ways that you can define your own success, 7 things that you can look at that will help you define what success is. And then we're going to go through some questions that will help you do that. So number 1, what does success look like to you? And we're going to go through an exercise that's going to let you define that in just a few minutes. You need to have a clear picture of it. You need to have it directly in front of you. What do you want? What you want is your definition of success around art, work, and living. What is it that you want? The clearer you can get on that, the less fuzzy it is, the more satisfaction you will have. Satisfaction equal happiness. So you want to begin to wipe away that steamed mirror so that you can get a really clear picture of what it is that you want. Ignore what other people think and other people say. And I include every single other person in your life when I say that. Nobody else gets to define success for you but you. If you tailor what you want around other people, you will come to resent them. Now, does that mean that you need to go blow up every relationship you have and dynamite your home life? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But if you're not becoming clear on what it is that you want, you're not being honest in your relationships with others, your family, your friends, your partner. And it's crucial to those relationships that you get clear on what you want. And gaining that clarity means not letting other people tell you their version of success, their version of what you should want. One version, for example, that I got told was that what I should want was a nice, comfortable life in academia that then let me retire at 65, and I would have all the time in the world that I wanted to go paint when I wanted to then. That wasn't coming from partner or family. That came from my best friend, who I dearly love. But when I started thinking outside of the box, it challenged some of her ideas around what was possible. And I got a lot of pushback from her on that. I had to quit listening to her and any of her feedback on what success might mean and what I might want and what I might be going to do, because it was pulling me down. So you want to be really careful about whose input you take in on that. I can't tell you what you want. Your best friend can't tell you what you want. Your partner can't tell you what you want. Your children can't tell you what you want. Your parents can't tell you what you want. You have to know it. You have to become the author of your life. You get to design it. So it took a while. My friend came around and actually told me a couple of years later, "You were so right. I was wrong. I should have kept my mouth shut. And what you did was exactly the right thing for you at that time. And you've inspired me to ask those same questions myself." So put your earplugs in. Don't listen to anybody else but yourself on that. You get to define it. So your vision of success doesn't have to include selling 4 million paintings before you become successful. It doesn't mean that you have to make $1 million. It can mean that you sell a whole lot of paintings. It can mean that you make $1 million, but it can mean that you don't care about the money at all. You just care about the impact. Or you just want to paint for pleasure and you're going to get financial stability somewhere else. But getting clarity on that is super, super important. Then once you know what you want to set goals and make a plan, because visions don't come into fruition without goals and a plan. There's a lot of training here in the group, in the membership, around defining your goals and setting goals so that you can actually achieve them. So we're going to put some links into the replay of this and the recording of this so that you can go there directly if you're watching the replay or the recording. But you want to make goals that are very clear, that are what we call SMART goals, that are measurable, that are realistic, that are achievable, that are attainable, things that you can actually do, things that are timely. You want your goals to align with what you want. Alignment is incredibly important. It is one of the most important values that I have. If you're not in alignment, you'll feel a deep sense of unease, of dissatisfaction. So alignment means your why. There's a whole training on that. Your values, your purpose, all line up with what you want. And then how you go about moving through the world. If you're out of alignment, you'll feel unease and discomfort, and you need to get back into alignment. So once you've made a plan, then you want to take action. You want to avoid overwhelm and get really, really specific. So having really lofty kind of general goals without having an idea how to get there is not super helpful. So get granular and get specific and take one baby step at a time. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Take one small step at a time. One of my favorite sayings about making progress in your own life towards goals came from Martin Luther King, and I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, "You don't have to be able to see the top of the staircase. You just have to be able to see the step in front of you." So while goals are super important, you just need to see the next step that leads you towards what you want. Number 5, This is where a lot of people fall down. You want to take rapid, messy action. Messy, imperfect action. How many of y'all are perfectionists? High five and raise your hand if you tend to be a perfectionist. Any of y'all perfectionists? Type it into the chat roll if you are. I have definitely been a perfectionist at one time or another. I still get trapped in that at points. I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Being a perfectionist prevents you from taking action. It's a form of procrastination. It's so that you don't have to fail. It really covers up fear of failure. What really sets people apart who achieve success is they let go of perfection, and they're willing to fail, and fail often, fail fast, and fail forward. So let go of that fear of failure. Take rapid, messy, imperfect action. Because guess what? You get to go back and revise. You get to tweak. You get to have do-overs. So what's the worst thing that can happen if you take action? You might fall flat on your face one time, but you can pick yourself back up and get back on. So my favorite example of that was when I was learning to ride bareback. And I know a lot of y'all have heard this story before, but I'm going to still say it again. I'll give you the short version. So when I was learning to ride bareback, again, as an adult instead of a child, I was sitting on the fence in a clinic. So this was a workshop, live workshop with lots of other people and a teacher that I didn't know. And I was really afraid of looking stupid because I was in the messy middle of getting back into riding. And I kept feeling like I should know how to do this. I used to ride all the time. And I was afraid of looking foolish in that workshop. I wasn't afraid of hurting myself when I fell. I was afraid of falling and looking silly. We were in an arena that had lots of deep sand, so very little chance of my getting hurt. I'd had the horse for quite a while. He was pretty good about protecting me. And he's really good about standing still. But even he was getting a little impatient. And the longer I sat on the fence and procrastinated, because I wanted to do it perfectly the very first time, the more impatient he got. And he started shifting all of his weight to his outside rear end, which meant he was now further away from the fence than he was in the beginning. So now I have a big chasm between me and my goal, his back. But I finally got up the nerve to throw a leg over, because that was all it was going to take. Grab his mane, throw a leg over, and run the risk of falling into the sand on the other side and having somebody laugh at me. When I finally threw my leg over, I did it with so much energy and so much force because I didn't have any memory, muscle memory. It had been too long. And I did indeed do exactly what I was afraid of doing. I propelled myself over the horse so hard that I landed on my bum in the sand on the other side. Horse looks around at me and goes, "You really are taking a long time doing this. Can you get back up again, please? I'll stand here, but I'm getting tired." So I got up, looked around. Nobody had even noticed. Nobody laughed. Nobody was watching me. I hadn't hurt myself, dusted the sand off my bum, got back up on the fence, and this time didn't dawdle around so long. And got him back up in alignment with the fence, took hold of his mane, threw a leg over, and stayed on top. And then managed to work my way through the rest of the clinic. But I spent an awful lot of time dithering. I don't want you to do that. You want to take rapid, imperfect action. What I realized was that sitting around and trying to figure it out in my head first just didn't work. You need to move your feet. We're designed to take action. So don't be afraid to take action. The membership is a safe place to do that. Nobody is going to laugh at you. You can post and ask questions of the group and get feedback and follow along behind the people who are just a little bit in front of you. So take that rapid, messy, imperfect action and then share the results with everybody else, whether you fail or you succeed. Number 6 is to review what success looks like to you again, because you probably need to tweak it a little bit after going through those first 5 steps. You can tweak your version of success, your vision of success, the rest of your life, because you're going to change. Circumstances are going to change. And things that are important to you right now may not be important to you in 6 months. As Lisa said about COVID changing her vision of success, stuff happens and your vision's going to change. So be aware of that and be willing to go back and review your vision of success and make adjustments. Number 7 is crucial. Don't quit too soon. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people quit pursuing their dream vision just before they're going to succeed, just before they hit their goal. Because the truth is, when you're feeling that overwhelm, when you're feeling like you just can't go on, you're in the messy middle. I've talked about that before. The messy middle is where you just can't see the other side. And that is usually where you just need to go take a walk around the block. You need to move your feet. You need to go do something totally different, but don't quit. That's the time to play all in, to go all in, to go back and review your vision of success again. What does it mean to you? How does it align with your values? And use that to hold yourself accountable. Don't quit too soon. You can always revise what success means to you. But what you cannot do is quit. Because when you quit on yourself, you quit on all of those people out there who need to see what it is that you've got to offer. Because remember, your art matters. And when you've been given a gift, you have a responsibility to share that with the world. And that's where your vision of success and you're becoming an author of your life becomes a crucial part of being a part of community, of being a part of the place that you live, the people that you interact with online, the rest of your world. So don't let that go too quickly. So we're going to get into the exercise of defining your own success. And I'm going to be putting this PDF into the membership so that you can download it. I'll go on and actually pop it up here right now. Oh, it's not going to, I forgot to let it share. Shoot, I meant to have it set so I could share a file and I forgot to do that. So this will be in the membership where you can download it. But I want to go over these questions right now to make sure that nobody has any questions around them. And I want you to just jot down stream of consciousness, no full sentences. You can type some of your answers into the chat roll if you'd like. But I want you to think about living, your definition of intentional, your creative lifestyle. So y'all may have heard of lifestyle design. Anybody heard of that before? Just type yes into the chat roll if that's something you've ever heard of before. Anybody ever heard of lifestyle design before? It's what I mean by authoring your life. Yeah, Mike says yes, exactly. We get to be the authors of our life. We get to design our life. And that's a very empowering thought. When you switch from having to submit to authorities, which most of us artists don't do real well at, we can become our own authority, our own author. So lifestyle design means intentionally arranging your art and your work in a way that enhances your lifestyle, that your creative living is at the center of your universe, that you arrange the other elements of your life around those things, not the other way around. Not that you're letting work determine your lifestyle, but your lifestyle determine your work. It is absolutely possible to do that. You just have to begin to think about what's most important to you and how you're going to make that all fit together. Great example of this is one of my favorite artists is an English artist named John Virtue. I love his name. John Virtue. John Virtue is a painter, and I think he is living in Spain right now. I'm not sure. I haven't looked him up in the last year or so. But for years, he worked as a postman, delivering the mail through not too far from you, Mike, up in the Lake District. He was a rural mail carrier. He took his sketchbook with him every day, and he drew the places along his route that intrigued him. And then he created paintings from those sketches, physically from the sketches, by gluing them together. He kept that job as a postman until he was making enough money as a painter to let it go. But he created his lifestyle around his work, around his lifestyle. He wanted to paint more than anything else. He wanted to be an artist more than anything else. So he found a job that gave him the freedom to be outdoors in nature, which he loved, and to move through the countryside that he loved. There's a lot of beauty in that. Even if he had never started making enough money to quit that job, I would have considered that a successful career, a successful life, because he consciously designed his lifestyle. He designed his life. So it's about being consciously an author. It's about being intentional. It's about arranging the work to do the art you want to do. So what does success look like to you in terms of things like health and wellness, around family and social life, around holidays and hobbies, around places that you might want to live, around the amount of time that you want to spend doing your art? Jot down some of those ideas. What brings you the most meaning and joy in your life? What brings you rest and recharging? How do you recalibrate and recharge after working and after making art? What activities, what types of things give you a lasting sense of fulfillment? What recharges you? What do you value most in life? And values can be things like the natural world, it can be connection, it can be sustainability, it can be painting, but jot down a list of the things that are most important to you. Don't overthink these things. I want you to have at least some ideas jotted down now. And I want people to type into the chat roll one thing that's coming to mind in terms of lifestyle that's super important to them. So share one thing into the chat roll right now about lifestyle that's super important to you. No judgment from anybody else, but just type something in about lifestyle that's important to you. And we'll just acknowledge all those over there in the chat roll. And think about this as a small form of accountability. You're putting it out there into the world. Virginia says creating, making, the act of making. It's important to me too, Virginia. I was working with my partner in the retreat this weekend, and he asked me what about making art really lit me up. And a lot of it just simply has to do with the making. I love the messiness of making stuff with paint. Lisa says, solitude, enough, but not too much. Yeah, I think that's super important. I need time away, and then I need time with people. Mike says, painting. Yeah, the act of painting itself becomes one of my deepest values. It may not be the deepest value for somebody else. That doesn't make them less of an artist. So anybody else have a value or something that's super, super important to them that they want to put down as being crucial to their lifestyle? Pop it into the chat roll, share it into the group, put it out there for some accountability, and share that with the rest of the members. You can always share this later. There are going to be some prompts around this, as you might guess, in the coming month, around intentional lifestyle. Kate says, bringing joy to people. Yeah, I can definitely see that being an important part of your lifestyle, Kate. Joy to others, so being part of a community. Joan says, my backyard, sitting in the backyard, watching the birds in the evening. High five, I'm right there with you. I have to have time in the day, in the morning and the evening, to just sit outside, to be outside. Lisa says, helping others. Kathy says, having an audience who loves and shares my art. Yeah, exactly. Putting that out there is super important, because then you can craft your life, you can author your life around it. You can rearrange things and let go of things that don't matter. We all spend way too much time being busy at things that don't matter. And then that we think of ourselves as being productive because society pats us on the head for being productive. But if you're productive at something that really doesn't matter and doesn't count to you, that's wasted time. So you really need to know what's important to you. I want you to spend some time with the questions that we're going over around all three areas over the next week. And even share some of those thoughts into the discussion in the membership, because what you share with the rest of the group will help others who are wrestling with some of the same issues. So living is the first thing you need to think about. What is your intentional lifestyle? You want to design your own life. Be the author of your life. Oops. As I start clicking too many things here, it's going to do its own thing. There we go. Art. Art's that second part there. Even though it's first in artwork living, the art is the second facet here that we're going to talk about. And it has to do both with creative control and creative freedom, because the two things need to go together. You need to have creative control over what you're making, and you need to have creative freedom. It's in the synergy between the two that the sweet spot sits. I've talked about you need a box, a framework, a habit, a ritual within which to find freedom as a painter, as an artist. And that's true for not just your art, it's also true for your life. It's also true about lifestyle and about work. But you want to have creative control and creative freedom. You want both things. So what's your art passion? What lights you up? I've said a whole lot of times, and I'm going to keep on saying it, don't make art to the market, what you think the market wants. You need to instead paint from your passion and find the market that's in alignment with that passion. That if you try to paint or make art to the market, you'll fail every time, because that art will lack passion. And passion, the emotional attachment, is what attracts collectors. It's what attracts viewers and followers. You have to know what your passion is. Keyword there is passion. What kind of medium do you like working with? How does it feel when you're working with it? What kind of art is it that floats your boat? What kind of creative projects bring you joy? Lisa, it's been great watching what you've been doing with your portrait series under quarantine, because it's very clear that that project brings you joy. And shock and awe, it brings other people a lot of joy as well. And the people that are in alignment with that are beginning to show up. That's going to be true for each and every one of us. Mavis says, keeping connections with family and friends. Yes. And having that weave into your art and your work creates a really extraordinarily rich life? Do you get to explore new creative ideas without everything crashing down around you? In other words, do you get that overlap between what you love and what your audience loves as well? Super important issues. So I want you to jot down some ideas around that. Yay, I love it. People already typing them into. That was my next thing, was to share some ideas here into the chat roll around this. Lisa says, I love gouache on clayboard. I've already sold 3 of the portraits. I'm not at all surprised. There is an emotional, engaged passion in those paintings. Your other paintings are good too, but these really are on fire, and they're going to speak to other people who feel that same connection, feel that same passion. So I'm not at all surprised you found 3 buyers for those already. Kate says, I can't paint for themed shows. Non-artists don't understand. I already know what I love to paint. High five right there with you. So what works for me is to paint what I love and then go looking for the themed shows that fit what I love. Don't find all the themed shows out there and then try to paint something that's going to fit each one of them. It won't work because you won't have that alignment between your passion and what your audience is passionate about. Very, very important. So themed shows are fine as long as they're in alignment with what your passion is. Virginia says, I do love doing non-objective, but I also enjoy painting a place that I love, both. And guess what? You don't have to choose. There are plenty of great artists that have 2 distinct bodies of work. And I'm going to completely forget his name right now. He's a German painter, probably the most successful German painter in the last 75 years. And he has 2 extraordinarily distinct bodies of work. One is completely abstract and non-objective, and the other is hyper-realist. Could not be further apart, apparently. But when you look at the 2 bodies of work, then you begin to see the linked things, the things that are common to both of them. Yeah, I'll try to pop his name into the replay. It's going to probably pop into my head as soon as I let it go, like in probably 5 minutes, it'll come to mind. But yeah, it's like sitting right back in the back of my mind. He's a master of both. And they're extraordinary paintings, big, massive, dramatic paintings. So you don't have to choose. You can do both of those things that you love. You just may need 2 different markets for them, but it doesn't mean you have to stop. Yeah, Virginia says texture and color are the common ground. Absolutely. And then you need to speak to those and you'll find the people who love both. Kathy says, oddly, themes help her, but I'll think about how my work will fit in. Yeah. I think themes that fit your work can really enhance what you're doing. And sometimes a theme can help you get out of a box that you've painted yourself into. So that can challenge your creativity, but you don't want to paint for other people. You want to paint for yourself. That's the key part there. So I want y'all to spend some time around thinking about what kind of art lights you up in its making. Get really, really, really clear on that. The third part of that triumvirate, is the work. Creating financial stability and reward is crucial for feeling some sense of satisfaction and happiness. And that stability doesn't have a number attached to it, except the number that you attach to it. So you want to be very, very clear about what that number is. And that number doesn't have to come from your art. It could come, just like John Virtue, from your job that you figured out how to make part of your art practice. And Virginia, I thought of it. It's Gerhard Richter. Richter, Gerhard Richter. Richter is a master of hyperrealism and complete non-objective work. Yeah, Mike says using oils has overtaken his love of watercolor. It doesn't mean he has to let go of watercolor, but right now he's really enjoying the oils, and that's going to show in his work. So you need to figure out what it is that you're going to do to create financial stability and reward so that you can have the lifestyle you want, not the other way around. You don't want your work to drive your lifestyle. And it can sound like that's unattainable. But when you let go of the world's desire to push down the idea that your occupation is your definition, you can let go of it. And then you can find joy in being a barista at Starbucks, as a friend of mine did for a long time, as a way of funding his creative practice. Or being a postman, as John Virtue did for a couple of decades, to fund his creative practice. And it actually became a core component of it. Or another friend of mine, two friends of mine, have worked at Whole Foods for 20 years as their way of finding financial stability and reward in order to pursue the work they were passionate about. Nobody gets to judge that but you. Nobody else gets to define that but you. So figure out how you may have already figured this out, but figure out how you're going to define financial stability and reward and what you're going to do to get that in alignment with designing the lifestyle that you want. What does financial success look like in order to be able to afford the lifestyle you want? What's your more than enough number? And that means getting real nitty gritty, and that you don't have to share with anybody. But what's your real more than enough number that leaves you with plenty to save for the future and to give back? Get really specific with those numbers. Think about studio revenue, but also about personal income goals, budgeting for savings and retirement investments, and giving back to your community. It's important to give back. In giving back, we become part of that cycle of designing a culture. So all of those factors are important. So there's no specific number that's the right one, but you need to know what it is for you so that you can figure out how to design that work aspect and component so that it suits what you want to do. So for example, Virginia says, I'm retired, so I have a pension, but I would like sales of my art to pay for the materials and art expenses. And I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. So that she can take her pension and use that to design her lifestyle and use the money that she makes from her art to pay for creating the art. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Virginia. And it's incredibly doable. And I think one of the things I would suggest that you look at is what those expenses are. So there's the materials, there are the paints, the canvases, the panels, whatever it is you're going to paint on. I know you well enough to know that you love to travel, and travel is a key part of your creative practice. Can't travel a whole lot right now, but we will be able to eventually. And so what would it look like to plan for that travel now so that it feeds your creative practice? You like to take workshops. Build that in so that you know how much that's going to cost so that you can keep feeding that creative practice. That's what I mean by getting down to the nitty gritty and really knowing what those numbers are. Yes, residencies and the workshops. Now, a lot of residencies will pay for themselves. That's the beauty of residencies. They give you a stipend. And when some of those start opening back up again, and some actually are open because there's the there's the way to do those and still socially distance and be safe. So now is still a good time to look at residencies. And there are art residencies all over the world. We're going to be talking about those later in the year, but I think that's something everyone should look at. The residencies that I've done have not only fed my soul, not only fed my work, my paintings, but they propel me in different directions that I would not have anticipated at all. So those kind of things are really, really crucial. Once you have gone through those and jotted down ideas, and you do not have to write in sentences. Nobody's going to be checking your work or giving you a grade on those, but you need to explore all three of those equally. Then I want you to think about putting that into a statement. I define success as, and then write it out and get it into a format that you're comfortable sharing with others. Because if you can share that into the membership, you'll find it happening a whole lot faster. Because what we put out there with a supportive group tends to happen. Accountability is super important. You have to be careful who you set yourself up to be accountable with, because going back to that, don't listen to other people. If you make yourself accountable to people who don't understand what you're trying to do, they can actually throw up roadblocks. But if you share what you want to do with people who understand it and who are nurturing and supportive, and people who will give you encouragement towards your success, you're a whole lot more likely to attain it. So Mern says, do you have a success statement, Mary, that you're willing to share with us? I will. We're about to run out of time, but I will share my success statement into the membership along with the training. I'll put it into the general discussion along with the training replay. So yeah, I'll share my statement with y'all as well. I worked through a lot of that stuff this weekend. I thought I knew exactly how I defined success, and then sitting down and going through it with peers and with a group leader helped me redefine some of that a lot just this past weekend. So yeah, I'm still tweaking mine from this weekend, but I'll get it in there. So I want everybody to think about that and to begin to craft their statement. And remember to take imperfect, messy, rapid action. And the first part of that is to start sharing it. Share your ideas. So I'm going to kick off that share, and I'll create a thread in the membership so that everybody else can share their vision of success underneath that. I know you can always go back and tweak it. It's a constant work in progress. Don't feel like you're locked into something that later feels like an ill-fitting set of clothes. You can change your clothes. That's the best part. So any other questions? We've got about 3 minutes left. So I want to make sure that I answer any questions you might have. If there's anything that I talked about that sounded cray-cray and cuckoo pants, let me know if there is. Kathy says, I didn't realize they gave you stipends in residencies. A lot of them do. Yeah, they do. One of them that I did not, and one did. The one that did not, it was because they didn't have the funding. It was the first time they'd done it, but I got all kind of other perks instead. So there are all kind of residencies out there, and some include stipends and some don't. There are residencies associated with national parks. There are ones associated with state parks, and there are ones associated with foundations. So there are lots of opportunities out there, tons and tons. So we'll see if we can't get some resources going there and do another training on just residencies later, because I think that's a great avenue for people. Yeah, you're welcome, Virginia. It is, I think it's key to keep re-examining those things. Keep your vision of success in front of you, but always keep reviewing it, because I think that's important. Knowing where you want to go is super important. There have been times in my life when people asked me what I wanted and I couldn't even answer them. And I don't want y'all to be in that spot. It took me a long time to get myself out of that and moving forward towards what I really, really wanted. And it wasn't because of anything anybody else was doing to me. It was a story I was telling myself. So we need to change our stories. And the only way to do that is to define that new vision of success. Then you can create a story around how you're going to get there. And I don't mean a story as in a fiction. I mean a new narrative that's going to drive what you're doing in your career, in your life. That's what I mean by being the author of your life, about intentionally designing your life. You are most welcome, Joan. I am glad that that resonated. Virginia says, you must mean to put them on Post-its in front of you. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, Virginia. You know I love Post-it note planning. So absolutely, get those Post-it notes going. I think Post-its really help in planning, but you got to get that vision first. And you want to paint a picture of it in your head that's so real that you can taste it, you can see it, you can smell it, and you can touch it in your mind. When you do that, it will happen. And I'm not talking about woo, I'm talking about getting in alignment with what it is you want and really knowing it on a really deep level. So thank y'all for joining me here today. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon. Mern, yes, there is going to be a way for you to print out the presentation. I am going to put this PDF into the membership so that you can print it out. Absolutely. So you can print out the whole thing. Definitely. I want y'all to work through that and to hold it in front of you as we're going forward, thinking about what it is that you want and what your idea of success is. Take care, everybody. Talk to you again soon. Happy painting. And remember, paint on.